Hey everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Dr. Angel Storm. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm answering another one of your questions today, and the question is, the narcissist knew my boundary but violated it anyway. What should I do? Okay, good question. I guess this is a common problem for setting boundaries with narcissists, and I think that what is so shocking to people, I think in this situation where it's like you told the narcissist not to do something, then they went and did it anyway, you're thinking to yourself like, what's wrong with you? I told you not to do that, right? You're thinking about it from your perspective. You're not thinking about it from the narcissist perspective. You're not thinking about it from what they're thinking about. You know, this is like you telling an alligator, don't bite me, and then getting in the water and the alligator bites you. Now you're mad at the alligator when you done seen the alligator in the water before you got in it. The alligator's doing what it should do, and like this is the same thing. The narcissist is doing what a narcissist will do. And I know that it can be difficult to accept that there are people out there that will not listen to your boundaries, that will violate them, that will think about only themselves first. That can be shocking if you've never dealt with somebody like that before, and I understand that. But you need to understand too that one, the narcissist is doing what a narcissist does, and number two, you actually didn't have a boundary. You know why? I know, because you're asking what to do now. The narcissist violated your boundary, now what should I do? Boundaries only work when there's consequences, okay? I need you to think about this from like a global perspective. We have boundaries set up, right? We call them borders around our countries, and there's rules for coming in. If you try to come in another way, right, which is a boundary. Boundaries tell people where the door is. Walls keep everybody out. Right? We want to have boundaries in our lives. We don't want to have walls. We want people to come in. We just want them to come in through the door. We don't want them to try to come in some other way. Same thing in the nation, right? We got some boundaries. We got borders set up. There's a way to get into other people's countries, and there's a way to abide once you get into that country. And in fact, coming into another country, you're saying, I agree to follow those rules, even if those rules are different from the rules of the country you just came from. You need to think about it that way. You understand that there's massive penalties in other countries for things that here in the US would be no big problem, right? I went to Saudi Arabia several times, and every time that you're about to land, you have to fill a customs form, and right on it says there's death to drug dealers. That's a death penalty offense. So you know right away, like if you're trying to come here with some drugs, you're facing the death penalty automatically. You must have, the boundary comes with the consequence. The boundary is no drugs. The consequence is death in Saudi Arabia. Okay, so you've got to think about it that way. A boundary is not just like a fence. It's like if you cross this fence, this is what's going to happen. And lots of times when we're setting up boundaries, we're like, okay, I know I don't like that. I know I don't like that. I know I don't like that. And so you're thinking about that from your perspective again. You're thinking about it from like, okay, I don't like those things. I'll just tell this person I don't like when they do those things, and they're going to stop doing them. That's not how a narcissist works. A narcissist is always after more. They are energy vampires. I speak about this all the time on this channel. They will always be after more. It's up to you to decide when enough is enough, when they've had enough taking from you. And you need to be the one to set that boundary and enforce it. And you enforce the boundaries by setting consequences, good and bad, by the way. This is true in every relationship. So if somebody is constantly proving themselves to be a faithful, trustworthy, they show up on time, they're a good friend to you, they listen well to you, they whatever level that you have them at, if you just met and you're just an acquaintance, but they prove themselves over time, they move up to be a friend, right? This is how friendships grow and relationships develop of all kinds. And the same thing is true, and like that progression is a consequence of all of those boundaries being nurtured, of the relationship being cared for equally by both parties. So consequences just mean that it's something that will happen. It's the cause, right? There was an effect and now there's a cause, and the cause is neutral. It's not good or bad. Consequences is the same thing. But we tend to think about consequences in only negative terms, but it's not true. That's not the truth. And also, by the way, neither is trust. We say trust to be a positive thing. I trust that person. Well, guess what? I can trust my enemies now just as much as I can trust my friends. It just simply means that I'm reliable. I can rely on them to behave a certain way, right? And I can trust that a narcissist is always going to be a narcissist. I can trust that the narcissist behavior is always going to be the same. So you need to really get, I think a lot of confusion comes in from our own terminology that we're using every day, but we're not actually sitting down to think about do I know the definition of this word? Do I actually know what that means? Do I actually use it appropriately within my own life? Every day you're using these terms and your body is hearing everything that you're saying, and it's all of your being is responding to those terms that you're using, whether you're using them appropriately or not. So you need to think about that. If you're sending mixed messages to your own self because you don't have the right definition, go get the right definition first of all. When it comes to setting boundaries, you need to have the consequences. They go hand in hand, and you can't have one without the other, right? Like I just said, you can't have an effect without a cause. You got to have both of them going together. So you need to know what is going to be an appropriate consequence for that violation of the boundary. You don't just come trying to find an answer later on once that boundary's been broken and figured out what you're going to do now that boundary's been broken. So you need to have a consequence set up, and the consequences are going to be based off of your season of life, where you are now and where you want to be. So 23-year-old Angel had different boundaries than 34-year-old Angel because I had a different season in my life. I was in a completely different, everything was completely different, right? And so you need to know that, like, hey, this is where I am in life, this is what I want in life, and I know how to get from where I am to what I want. And boundaries are like the thing that should be guiding your path there. So they not only keep all of the bad stuff out, but they keep all the good stuff in. So they make sure that you're going to reach that goal. And so from there, you need to know your season of life, your goals in life, where you are now, where you want to be, and how to get there. And your boundaries are going to help channel you on that path, right? So you need to think about that. If you're not willing to enforce something, don't even set it, because again, you're sending yourself those mixed messages, and it actually causes brain damage. Do you know that your brain, when you say something to yourself but then you don't follow through with it, there's actual consequences going on in your brain. Your brain is so plastic, meaning that it is so malleable that every time you do something, you say you're going to do something but you do the opposite, it's growing stronger and stronger and stronger. There's actual nodules that you're growing in your brain every time you do that. There's proteins being released where you start to not even trust or believe your own words. You don't even believe what you are saying to your own self. And so it's very important that you don't say one thing and do another. It's very important just for your own health, by the way, in any kind of situation, regardless of a narcissist or not. So be aware of that. You don't want to set yourself up for failure. So if you know that you are conflict avoidant, you don't want to step into that uncomfortable position of having to enforce a boundary, you need to set a small boundary, and you need to practice with people before you try to go into the environment where the narcissist is. So if you cannot say no and have it be a full sentence, why don't you work on that one? That one is a good one to work on, because no is a full sentence, and you don't need to be explaining yourself to everybody about why you're saying no. So try this with, people that you're comfortable with. Try this with your best friends. Try this with your family, whoever you're comfortable with, before you try to just establish this with a narcissist, right? And so wherever you are, you need to know where you are and start working on that step, and then progressing further and further into your boundaries. If this is a situation where you just cannot maintain control of it, no matter what you say, that you cannot follow through with a consequence of any kind, you need to just get yourself out of that situation. That's not a healthy situation for you. And I know I mentioned this just in the right beginning of this when I was talking about the alligator. Narcissist is going to do what a narcissist does. But I really do want to make sure that I just leave you with the fact of, like, you're not going to change a narcissist. You're always going to have to be prepared. Like, you're ready to defend, to enforce your boundaries every single time you're with a narcissist. You're never going to have a moment where you can just relax and just kind of be yourself around the narcissist, because everything that you do and say is going to come back against you at some point. And so for that reason, you're always going to have to be on guard. And I say this just to say, be aware that that's the environment that you're walking into. And if you aren't prepared to deal with that, if you aren't prepared to be aware, be alert the entire time you're with a narcissist, then you need to not be in that situation at all. Sometimes we have to be in these situations. There's times where we cannot get out of the situation, and quite honestly, there's so many narcissists, it's quite prevalent now, that we're in a place where you're not gonna have a narcissist in your life. You run into these people whether you're at work or in your family or a friend of a friend, or whatever the situation is, you're going to find them. There's just too many of them for you to not ever have any in your life. So you're going to need to get good at setting boundaries and enforcing them and all that kind of stuff. You're going to need to do that skill. That's a life skill that everybody's going to need, especially this generation that's coming up. The next generation, they're going to need this skill. This is a life skill. This is not oh, it would be a nice to have skill. No, this is something that is absolutely mandatory. They need it. So just be aware that you're going into that situation, you're putting yourself in that situation, and you're going to need to know how to set your boundaries, enforce the consequences, and you're going to need to be able to handle the emotional fallout of that as well. Sometimes people who have been so used to the abuse, I've talked about this in all my videos. I talk about trauma bonding, and you're going to get so used to that trauma bond that it feels foreign for you to not have that abuse in your life. You're going to have to learn a new normal. You're going to have to learn that calm is okay, that it's not normal to have that constant heightened anxiety all the time. You're going to have to learn a new normal. So if you aren't in the position where you can accept that that's normal, like peace is normal, and if it costs me my peace, it's too expensive and I'm not going to go into that situation. If you're not in that place yet, recognize that you need to do some work on yourself before trying to get back into a situation where you're dealing with a narcissist all of the time. It's just not healthy, and you're going to continue to attract the same spirit in a different body because you're not healed yet. Again, we attract what we are, not what we want. If you find something is constantly out of your reach, check yourself and find out why you seem to always be repelling that thing from coming to you. We attract what we are, not what we want. So you guys, I hope that this video has helped you understand that a narcissist is going to do what a narcissist does. They're always going to be violating your boundaries. It's up to you to have the consequences when they violate the boundaries, not if, when they violate the boundaries. You have to have a consequence. Otherwise, you are teaching them that this is okay, that this will continue, and they will expect to be able to gain more and more control, manipulation, influence over you. So be aware of that. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to my channel below and turn on that little bell so that you're notified whenever I upload a new video to this channel.